Headlines in the international press this morning, and we're going to start with the International Herald Tribune, as we often do, because it runs with the disaster off Sicily and the deaths of up to 300 would-be migrants. The deaths have renewed criticism of European immigration policies.
Yes, the tragedy has provoked a strong response from Italian authorities. That's on the cover of the Gulf News. It says Rome is calling for assistance from Europe to deal with the influx of refugees.
Headline news on the Financial Times. The US Treasury and IMF warn of dire consequences if the US defaults on its debt. With an eye to the October 17th deadline, American banks have stocked cash machines with extra funds.
Well, in the South China Morning Post, US and Japan boost military alliance for the first time in 16 years.
And the UK's Guardian says Heathrow Airport and the airlines using it are angry over a proposal to freeze landing fees. Now, British Airways is hinting at moving some planes to cheaper hubs overseas.
And the Daily Telegraph, the traditional porridge has shown a surprising surge in sales. Market researchers found that nearly 50% of Britons now enjoy a hearty bowl of the gloopy cereal every morning.
Foul.
And I say the word gloopy to put you off, because I know you don't like it.
Well, joining us is Cornelia Meyer, CEO of MRL Corporation, business consultancy, and we'll ask you about porridge later on. But can we start then with the International Herald Tribune, and in fact, and the Gulf News as well, because there are two lines coming out of this awful disaster that's occurred off the coast of Italy. Just 13 days or so, just over a week since the last disaster occurred, in which I think about 10 or so would-be migrants died. What is this? What are the issues that this brings out, this highlights?
I think there's two things. One of it is, you know, how dire must things be in Africa and North Africa, you know, the economic prospects, which are basically nil. And so people will go through any length and, you know, sort of go on a boat and you know, really at harm's length. And some people make a lot of money, you know, sort of having people pay for these passages, which the people have to take at their peril. The other one is, as the Gulf News points out, you know, the Italians, everybody goes to Lampedusa, and the Italians have potentially so many immigrants, and the rest of Europe is not helping. And if I just may put a little twist on that, if we look at Syria, and if we look at what Jordan, a very poor country, has taken in 500,000 Syrians. Lebanon, a country with a lot of trouble, has taken in 750,000 Syrians. And Turkey, which is also not the richest country on earth, has taken 500,000 Syrians. And they're not moaning. Who are we as Europeans if we, you know, if we are just that anti-immigrants?
There's not seems to be the cross-border solidarity that you might get in other areas of the world in Europe, does there? I mean, why is that?
Well, I guess, I mean, you know, economic times are harsh in Europe as well, so people are trying to stem it. But I compare that to Jordan. You think economic times are harsh in Europe? Go to Jordan. They're much harsher.
And migration, I mean, it's always happened since history began, and it will continue forever, won't it? Migration just is.
It will continue, and if you look, the really successful countries like the United States work on migration.
Now, let's move on. Let's talk about Treasury and IMF, because, of course, we're heading into day 4 of the US government shutdown, and it looks like, you know, everyone's getting involved in warning everyone else. And US banks are hoarding cash now in cash machines to make sure that if people panic, then they're ready. But it looks like so far that panic hasn't set in. How long do you think we have, Cornelia, before it does?
I think the panic may not set in, but what's the larger story, the bigger story, rather than the panic, is what happens if they can't come to an agreement on the debt ceiling. Because remember, about 2 years ago, they nearly didn't come to an agreement, and they were downgraded. The S&P downgraded the rating. Now, if you have as much debt as the US has, a downgrade is really very bad, because it means your cost of borrowing goes up.
Last thing you want, because exactly.
Absolutely. So I mean, this is really bad. And it was interesting. Yesterday there was an article in the Financial Times, an opinion piece, which said, well, you know, the reserve currency of the world is the dollar, and maybe we have to wean the world off this single dependency on the dollar.
That will take time,
that will
take a long time, and a change in mentality.
A change in mentality, but it may happen if the US US. I mean, it's in the US's interest to have it as the reserve currency. So it's not in the interest of the United States to keep on bickering over the debt ceiling.
South China Morning Post. That highlights what it calls a boost to the military alliance between US and Japan. Presumably that's something that the Chinese will not particularly be in favour of.
They're not particularly in favour of, but they're very much at the heart of it, because it is that growth of the influence, the military influence of China in the region, you know, with the islands, but also with you know, the Vietnamese, and everybody's very worried, the Vietnamese, the Filipinos, about the Chinese might. And it is North Korea. And we should not forget that Mr. Abe is the son of his father, Mr. Abe, who was in the Fukuda faction, who was the former Kishi faction, which are the more hawkish faction. So if you look at domestic politics, it makes absolute sense for Mr. Abe to, and it's a great, you know, feather in his cap as part of the most hawkish faction of the LDP.
Now let's move on to this story. This is really interesting because yesterday, of course, we were talking about the Civil Aviation Authority, the UK regulator, coming in with its latest decision on how much Heathrow and Gatwick can charge airlines. Now, of course, they're getting it from both sides, aren't they? The airlines are saying, you know, you can't make them charge us as much as they were, and the airports are saying, well, if you don't charge more, we're not going to be able to invest in infrastructure. What they've done now is they've linked it to RPI inflation.
Yeah.
That's probably more than what the airlines wanted. And now we're getting a warning from BA, from the boss of its parent company, IAG, that BA could quit Heathrow over these fears. Now, this sounds to me like a little bit of hot air. Or do you think there's any...
No, absolutely. I wish them luck, because, you know, look at what is the alternative. Gatwick, the other alternative is, say, Madrid. Good luck. That's so far away. Amsterdam, I thought KLM is very important there. So good luck. Birmingham, you know, the H2 railway, which is now looks like it's not happening. So we have a unique position with Heathrow, which is very important for London as an economic place, for the UK. So we should probably we should get on and make Heathrow work better. And, you know, empty threats are never a good thing. When you make a threat, be very certain you can execute.
Generally,
even if you're even if you're BA, but it's just it's silly if you want to. Sometimes you win more friends by having a more conciliatory approach.
All right, let's conclude now with a look at breakfast. So apparently many more of us here in Britain are having that gloopy stuff, as you put it. Porridge is the... It's the new superfood. It's being touted around as cholesterol reducing. Really?
It's great. And you know, when you have cereal, you have the sugar in there. You have to take whatever the manufacturer, Kellogg or somebody, however much sugar they put in. With porridge, you have control over your calorie intake. And it gives you a good foundation.
But
I was brought up on porridge, and I still eat porridge.
But Mariam, you've got something. You've got a porridge experience to
yes,
share, haven't you?
I just don't think that porridge fills you up. They say that it makes you feel fuller for longer, but come on, it doesn't last.
It does. No. I mean, if I have porridge, I don't need lunch.
An hour later, I want a pan of chocolate.
Are there types? Come on now, they're types. Come on, porridge
eaters. You just cook it up. You put enough milk in it, very little brown sugar.
Do you use full-fat milk or water?
I use full-fat milk, and it fills me up, and it's good for my bones. I will not have osteoporosis. It's excellent.
Thank you, Meyer. That's a fantastic advert for porridge. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Cornelia.
And thank you very much for joining us here at BBC World News this morning.
Thank you. Bye-bye.